My wife secretly sold our family home for $350, $0 behind my back, then claimed I was insane when I found out. But things got even worse when she filed for divorce and demanded half of everything, only to discover she hid $200, $0 in offshore accounts, and forged my signature on multiple legal documents. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video, using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get blindsided like this. Honestly, I considered myself pretty solid in my marriage, had a good job, a nice house, and a wife who seemed to love me. But all that changed in one night when I stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to see, something that turned my world upside down. It started with little things, small signs that something was off. Lisa, my wife, had been acting weird for months. She'd be distant, cancel plans at the last minute, and there were these secretive phone calls she'd take in the bedroom. With the door closed, she'd get defensive if I asked who she was talking to, snap at me for no reason. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe she was stressed at work or just tired. But then I noticed her phone was always glued to her hand. She'd sneak around, hide texts, delete messages, stuff like that. One night I caught her in the act. I was walking past the bedroom and I saw her hurriedly hide her phone when I entered. The screen was lit up with a message from someone named Jake. I didn't recognize the number, but the message was suggestive, flirty even. My stomach sank. I asked her about it and she just laughed it off, calling me paranoid. Said I was overthinking, that she was just friends with Jake, that I was imagining things. But I knew better. Something was definitely going on. The signs weren't just small anymore. They were screaming at me. The late nights, the secretive behavior, her evasiveness. I started digging, going through her emails, her social media accounts, anything I could find. And that's when I found the real bombshell. Hidden in her email drafts, there were plans, meetings, times, locations, and a lot of money involved. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It turned out she'd been selling our house behind my back. Not just selling it, she'd already done it for $350, $0. I found the official documents, her signature forged on the papers, and the escrow deposit receipt. She, hidden it from me, lied about everything. I was stunned. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this, sell our home without even telling me? I was furious, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. But that was just the beginning. When I confronted her about the sale, Lisa's reaction was priceless. She looked at me like I was crazy, denied everything, said I was paranoid again. She kept lying, spinning stories about how she was just handling some stuff for me, how I was overreacting. She claimed I was imagining the whole affair, that I was paranoid and insecure. But I had the proof right there in my hands. I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and confusion. It was like waking up from a nightmare where everything I thought was real turned out to be a lie. What hit me hardest was realizing how cold she was about the whole thing. She didn't care that she'd sold our family home, our memories, our stability. None of that mattered to her. She just shrugged and tried to dismiss it as if she hadn't done anything wrong. That's when I knew, deep down, I couldn't trust her anymore. Not just about the house, but about everything. The woman I married was gone. Now I was left with a mess I didn't know how to clean up. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, trying to process what I'd uncovered. I felt betrayed on every level by her lies, her deception, her blatant disregard for the life we built together. I kept asking myself how long she'd been planning this, how many other things she'd hidden from me. The thought of her being with Jake, or whoever else, made me sick. And the worst part, I still didn't have all the answers. I just knew I needed to confront her again, but I wasn't sure what words could even begin to capture what I was feeling. And then the next day, things got even worse. The morning after I found out about the sale, I decided I couldn't just sit around and stew in my anger. I needed answers, and I needed them right now. I called Lisa, her phone was ringing, and I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. When she finally picked up, her voice was clipped, annoyed even. "Yeah, what do you want?" I took a deep breath. "Lisa, I know everything about the sale, about the money, about Jake. How long has this been going on? There was a pause on the other end, then she sighed heavily. Look, I don't need a lecture. I was handling things for us. You've been so paranoid lately, I don't know what you want from me. Handling things, you sold our house behind my back for $350, $0, and you think that's handling things. You forged my signature on those documents. Do you even realize how serious that is? Her tone turned defensive. You're overreacting. I did what was best for us. You've been so distant, this was my way to fix things. You're always so controlling, so paranoid. I don't even know why I married you sometimes. That was the moment I realized how deep her lies went. She was spinning stories, twisting everything to make herself the victim. I could hear her trying to gaslight me, and I felt the rage boiling in my chest. How dare she call me paranoid when she's the one sneaking around, lying and betraying our vows? I told her I'd be over to talk face to face. When I arrived at the house, she was sitting on the couch, makeup freshly applied, acting like nothing was wrong. She greeted me with that fake smile she always used when she knew she was hiding something. So I know about the sale, I know about the money, and I know you've been lying to me about everything, I said, my voice trembling with anger. Her eyes flickered, then she looked away. You're making a big deal out of nothing. You're just jealous because I've been talking to Jake, that's all. It's not a big deal. I clenched my fists. Not a big deal. You sold our home, our entire family's future, without telling me. And you're trying to brush it off like it's nothing. You've been lying for months, haven't you? She stood up, her voice rising. Look, I'm sick of your accusations. I've done everything I could to keep this family afloat. Maybe if you weren't so controlling, I wouldn't have had to do all this behind your back. That was the moment I knew I had to get serious. I told her I was done with her lies, that I wanted the truth, no more excuses. But she just rolled her eyes, saying I was overreacting, that I was crazy for thinking she'd do something so terrible. She claimed she was doing all this for us, that she loved me and I was just too blind to see it. But I saw through her. The mask was slipping. I knew she was hiding something big, something that affected everything. I felt like I was drowning in her lies, sinking deeper into a pit of betrayal I couldn't climb out of. That afternoon, I started digging into her financials, just to confirm what I already suspected. I found bank statements showing she'd opened offshore accounts, hiding at least $200, $0. She'd been squirreling money away, probably from the sale of the house or other side deals she'd been making. I couldn't believe how calculating she'd been. She forged my signature on legal documents, power of attorney, deeds, everything. She'd even managed to get me to sign papers I didn't understand, probably under her pressure or manipulation. The betrayal ran even deeper than I thought. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the entire foundation of our marriage. I felt like I'd been played, used, and thrown aside like garbage. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was a con artist in disguise. I remember sitting there, staring at the mountain of evidence, feeling numb and furious all at once. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. How did I miss all these signs? How did she manage to pull this off for so long without me catching on? I felt like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with this. But I also knew that confronting her again would only escalate things. I was torn between calling the police, hearing a lawyer, or just walking away and starting over. Every option seemed like a minefield. The worst part was knowing she'd probably planned this from the start. She lied, cheated, and manipulated everything, and now she was trying to turn the tables on me. I felt like I'd lost everything: my trust, my sense of security, my faith in what we had. And that's when I realized that revenge might be the only way to make her feel some of what she'd taken from me. But I'll tell you more about that in the next part. After spending hours poring over the evidence, I knew I couldn't just sit back and let her get away with everything. I had to plan my next move carefully. The anger, betrayal, and sense of helplessness were driving me, but I also knew I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't let her spin her lies again or manipulate me into doing something I'd regret later. That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the documents and bank statements spread out in front of me. The offshore accounts, the forged signatures, the hidden money, it all painted a picture of pure greed and deception. I felt like I was dealing with a different person, not the woman I'd loved and trusted for years. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was determined. If she thought she'd get away with this, she was dead wrong. The next step was to gather more intel. I started talking to a lawyer I knew from work, someone recommended, someone discreet. I didn't want Lisa to catch wind of what I was doing. I needed proof, legal backing, and a plan. My lawyer was straightforward. He explained that she'd committed serious crimes, fraud, forgery, possibly theft, and that I had grounds to take action. But he also warned me that she might be planning to fight back hard, especially if she had offshore accounts with millions stashed away. While all this was happening, I kept an eye on her. She kept up her act, pretending everything was normal, but I saw cracks in her facade. She was nervous, snapping at small things, avoiding my gaze. I caught her trying to access her hidden accounts again, probably to move more money or hide her tracks. That's when I knew I had to act fast before she could cover her tracks even more. One evening, I decided to set a trap. I told her I was going to confront her about everything, about the sale, the money, the offshore accounts, and that I wanted answers. I wanted her to slip up, to reveal her true intentions. I didn't want her to think I was just bluffing anymore. I wanted her to know I had concrete evidence and that I wasn't afraid to use it. That night, I sat her down in the living room, my heart pounding. I laid out everything I'd discovered, showing her the bank statements, the forged documents, the offshore account details. I watched her face turn pale, then red with anger. Her fake calm cracked for a moment and she stammered. "Look, I was only trying to protect us," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't understand how complicated things are. I was doing all this to secure our future. You're just jealous, insecure, and I don't have time for your accusations." I stared at her, cold and disgusted. "Protect us? You're a liar, Lisa. You've been stealing from us, selling our house behind my back, forging my signature, and all for what? Some guy named Jake, or just to line your own pockets. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm done being your pawn." Her eyes flashed with anger. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, I've covered my tracks. You're just too blind to see the truth. I've got money stashed away, more than you even know. And if you try to take me to court or call the police, I'll make sure you regret it." That was the moment I realized she was dangerous. She wasn't going to go down quietly. She'd fight dirty, lie even more, and probably try to spin everything in her favor. But I also knew I had the evidence, and I wasn't going to back down. I told her I was done playing her game, that I was going to take legal action, and that she should prepare for the consequences. Over the next few days, I contacted a forensic accountant to dig deeper into her financials. I wanted to find every last hidden dollar, every offshore account, every secret transaction. What I found was staggering. More accounts, more money, and even some fake legal documents she'd forged to try to transfer assets away from me. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, trying to guilt me, calling me crazy, saying I was ruining our marriage. But I saw through her. I knew her game now. I knew she'd do anything to keep her secrets, even lie, cheat, and manipulate. I was ready to fight back, not just for the money, but for my dignity and sanity. I finally hired a lawyer who specialized in financial crimes and marital disputes. We prepared to file for divorce, but more importantly, to expose her fraudulent activities. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, not just financially, but emotionally. I was done being the victim. I was going to make sure she faced the consequences of her betrayal. As I sat in my empty house that evening, staring at the pictures of our life together, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of sadness and resolve. This wasn't just about money or property anymore. It was about trust, respect, and the fact that she had completely betrayed everything we built. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to take her down. She thought she could get away with everything, but she'd made a huge mistake crossing me. Now, it was time to settle the score. The legal process moved faster than I expected once I handed over all my evidence to my lawyer. She wasted no time filing the divorce papers, citing irreconcilable differences, but I knew that wasn't the full story. I wanted her held accountable for everything: selling our house, forging my signature, hiding hundreds of thousands in offshore accounts. I wasn't just after a divorce, I wanted justice. Lisa's reaction was predictable. She went into full denial mode, throwing tantrums, claiming I was trying to ruin her, accusing me of paranoia again. She insisted she was doing everything for us, that I was just too stupid to see her sacrifices. But I had the proof, screenshots, bank statements, legal documents, and I wasn't backing down. I knew she was scared now, and that made her all the more dangerous. One day she showed up at my office trying to manipulate me. She begged, cried, and even accused me of cheating, another lie, of course. "You're just jealous because I've been with Jake," she said, her voice dripping with false innocence. "I never loved you anyway. I just stayed because I thought I had to, but I'm done pretending." That was the last straw. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her she could spin her lies all she wanted, but I had everything documented. I told her I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine, and that I'd make sure she paid for her betrayal. She left in a huff, but I knew she was plotting her next move. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her financials. I hired a forensic accountant, and what I uncovered was even worse. She transferred hundreds of thousands into offshore accounts, probably planning to disappear once the divorce was finalized. She forged my signature on legal documents, including the power of attorney and property deeds. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The level of deception was staggering. I also learned that she'd been secretly seeing Jake the entire time. I found hotel receipts, text messages, even pictures. They'd been sneaking around behind my back, meeting in hotels, sending each other explicit photos. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt more was knowing she'd been lying to my face all along. I decided I had to do something drastic. I contacted the authorities, federal agents even. I wanted her to face charges for fraud, forgery, and theft. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, so I prepared for the worst. I wanted to expose her lies, make her pay for what she'd done. One evening I confronted her again, this time with even more evidence. I laid out everything: her offshore accounts, the forged signatures, the secret meetings with Jake. Her face turned white and she started yelling, calling me a crazy man, but I didn't care anymore. I was done playing her game. "I'm exposing you," I told her. "You've stolen from me, lied to my face, and betrayed everything we had. You're going to jail for this." Her eyes flashed with fury. "You'll regret this. I'll ruin you." But I was prepared. I had the evidence, the legal backing, and the support of law enforcement if needed. I wasn't going to let her walk away scot-free. The more she tried to threaten me, the more determined I became. I knew I was on the right side of this fight, and I wasn't going to let her destroy what was left of my life. The next few weeks were chaos. She hired her own lawyer, trying to drag things out, but I had the upper hand. The court hearings were brutal. She lied, spun stories, and tried to manipulate the judge, but my evidence was solid. The offshore accounts were frozen, and I filed for full custody of our assets, her hidden money included. I also learned about some of her other lies. She'd been secretly taking out loans in my name, forging my signature on credit cards, all to fund her secret life. She'd been living a double existence, and I was just discovering the tip of the iceberg. The emotional toll was huge. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. But I also felt a strange sense of relief, knowing I was finally taking control. I had been used, manipulated, and lied to for so long. Now I was fighting back. I'd never been the kind of guy to seek revenge, but seeing her fall apart under the weight of her own lies gave me a strange sense of justice. The final court date was nerve-wracking. I sat there, watching her try to maintain her composure, but I could see the cracks in her facade. When the judge finally ruled, it was in my favor. The offshore accounts were seized, and she was ordered to pay back every cent she'd stolen, plus damages for the fraud. That day, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I had won the battle, but I knew the war was far from over. This entire experience had changed me forever. I'd trusted someone I loved with everything, only to have that trust shattered in an instant. But I also learned something invaluable. Never ignore the signs, never let betrayal slide, and always fight for what's right, even if it means tearing your life apart to do it. After the court's decision, things started to settle into a strange new normal. The house was quiet, eerily so, since Lisa had moved out, taking whatever she could grab, leaving behind a trail of lies and broken trust. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The money was recovered, the offshore accounts froze, and I finally had some semblance of control again. But the emotional scars ran deep. I spent the next few weeks sorting through the wreckage of our life together. The house was empty, the memories tainted, and I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about her. The betrayal wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about the woman I loved turning into someone so cold, so calculated. I kept replaying the moments when she lied to my face, the times she sneaked around, the moments I missed the signs. One thing was clear: I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with my heart, not with my money, not with anything. I realized that the only way forward was to rebuild myself from the ground up. I started going to therapy, trying to process the pain and anger that had built up. It helped, but I knew I'd carry this scar for a long time. Meanwhile, I also started to think about revenge, not in some petty way, but in a way that would make her realize the extent of her betrayal. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, to see that her actions had consequences beyond just legal penalties. I wanted her to understand that she couldn't just lie, cheat, and steal without paying the price. So I devised a plan. I knew she was still trying to hide money, still trying to manipulate her way out of this mess. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, to see if she was still hiding assets or trying to rebuild her stash. What I found was disturbing. She'd opened new accounts, transferred funds, and even tried to buy property in another state. She was still playing her game, thinking she could outrun the consequences. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I contacted a friend of mine, someone who specialized in financial retaliation and strategic exposure. We set up a plan to leak her secrets to the right people: law enforcement, journalists, anyone who could make her pay a price. I wanted her to realize that her deception wouldn't go unnoticed forever. Meanwhile, I also made it clear to her that I wasn't finished. I sent her a letter, carefully worded, outlining everything she'd done, the evidence I had, and the fact that I'd be watching her every move from now on. I told her if she continued down this path, I'd make sure the truth came out fully and she'd never get away with it. It was a strange time, part relief, part revenge, part mourning. I felt lighter knowing I'd taken back control, but the pain of betrayal still lingered. I started focusing on myself, my career, and rebuilding my life. I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge sake, but I knew she needed to feel some of what she'd inflicted on me. And then, just when I thought I was starting to move on, she made her biggest mistake. She tried to contact me, claiming she'd changed, that she realized how much she loved me and wanted to fix everything. She begged me to forgive her, to give her another chance. I listened coldly and told her that I'd been betrayed too many times. That trust was broken beyond repair. She tried to manipulate me again, playing the victim, saying she was sorry, that she'd do anything to make it right. But I wasn't buying it. I knew her game now. I knew she was just trying to spin her way back into my life to manipulate me into forgiving her. I refused. I told her she'd burned that bridge forever. The final blow came when I decided to go public with everything. I leaked the story to a journalist, details about her financial crimes, her secret affairs, her lies. It went viral. Suddenly, everyone knew what she'd done. She lost her reputation, her friends, her standing. And I knew that in the end she'd pay a bigger price than any court could impose. Looking back, I realize I've grown stronger through all of this. It's been a brutal lesson in trust, betrayal, and resilience. I learned that sometimes the only way to move forward is to confront the darkness head-on. That revenge isn't about petty payback, but about making sure the other person feels the consequences of their actions. And most importantly, I learned that I can survive even the most devastating betrayals. Because at the end of the day, my own integrity and sense of self are what matter most. I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I'm rebuilding my life, piece by piece, stronger and wiser than before. And if there's one thing I want others to take away from this, it's that no matter how deep the betrayal, you can come out the other side. Just stay true to yourself and never let anyone steal your peace. Looking back now, I realize how much I've been through, And honestly, I'm surprised I'm still standing. The betrayal ran so deep I thought I'd never recover, but somehow I found a way. I learned that trust is fragile, and when it's broken, it's almost impossible to put back together. But I also learned that I am stronger than I thought, and I don't need someone who lied, cheated, and manipulated their way through my life to define me. One thing I've come to understand clearly is that revenge isn't about sinking to someone else's level or punishing out of spite. It's about reclaiming your power, exposing the truth, and making sure the other person faces the consequences of their actions. I had to take control of my life again after she tried to ruin everything I built. And I did it, fighting through the pain, the anger, and the heartbreak. Now, I focus on rebuilding what I lost, but this time with a sharper eye and a stronger heart. I've learned to trust myself more, to listen to my instincts, and to see red flags before they turn into disasters. I've also learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, being happy, successful, and free from the weight of lies. The experience has changed me. I'm more cautious, more aware, and definitely more resilient. I wish I could say I'm fully healed, but I know that's a process. What matters is that I'm moving forward, not letting her betrayal define who I am anymore. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, know that you're not alone. It's okay to feel broken, angry, or lost, but remember you have the strength to fight back. You can rebuild. And the best revenge is living your life on your own terms, better and stronger than before. I've learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. And in my case, I found a version of myself I never knew existed, someone capable of surviving the worst and coming out the other side. That's a victory no one can take away from you. So, I'm done looking back. I'm done dwelling on what I lost. From here on out, it's all about moving forward, healing, and making sure I never let anyone get that close again without earning my trust. Because at the end of the day, the only person responsible for your happiness and security is you. And I've learned that lesson the hard way.